Well, good morning, delegates. And let me thank Maggie for that introduction. And I want to thank my good friend John Bryan for inviting me to share in the Hope Global Forums. It's my honor to bring you greetings from the King Center here in Atlanta, the institution that my mother founded just 2.5 months after the assassination of my father as the official living memorial to the life, work, and legacy of my father. And I'm honored to share in this opportunity to join so many leaders from around the globe who share in the concern of building an inclusive economy. In part, that was my father's vision of the beloved community. A lot of people use that phrase, beloved community, and talk about it, and it sounds good. But not many take a deep dive into what it actually means and what's required to create it. It takes work, not just physical work, not just showing up with a strategic plan or strategic partnerships or just opening the door to obligatory job training opportunities or financial workshops. It really takes spiritual work. It takes changing hearts and minds and transforming our own internal constitution towards a concern for others, and as we just recited, a love for humanity. That is what will lead us into the beloved community. My father, as many of you know, was a Baptist preacher who used peaceful nonviolence means of direct action in order to fight the chaos in America in the mid-20th century. In 1967, he published his 4th book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? It was a time that was radically different than where we are now as a nation, but today, we still find ourselves facing the same issues as it relates to poverty and inequity. In it, he wrote these words: deeply woven in the fiber of our religious tradition is the conviction that we are souls of infinite metaphysical value. If we accept this as a profound moral fact, we cannot be content to see hunger, to see people victimized with ill health when we have the means to help them. Rich and poor, we have entered the same mysterious gateway of human birth into the same adventure of mortal life. The agony, he went on to say, of the poor impoverishes the rich. We are inevitably our brother's keeper because we are our brother's brother. We are our sister's sister. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. It is this salient spiritual notion that we are all interrelated that warrants us to be other-centered, to love our neighbors as ourselves, and to care for one another. Putting people first, as Raj Sisodia, who just spoke, knows all too well. It is the key to our shared prosperity, economically and otherwise, as members of the beloved community. My father's beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In this beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. A lot of the tragedy that we still see in the world today is because of a lack of human decency. Love for humanity is really the only way out, though. I think you would agree with me that we are facing challenging times today, unlike any we have seen in the past 50 years. And it's up to each of us to pick up the legacy that my father left of nonviolence and use it to create an inclusive economy wherein the beloved community is realized through the application of what he taught us as the 6 principles and 6 steps of Kingian nonviolence, which we now call Nonviolence 365 because it really is a way of life. This is the heart and soul of what we do at the King Center. We train organizations and individuals in the philosophy and methodology of nonviolence, the same strategy that led our nation out of the darkness of Jim Crow into the victorious gains of the civil, and I would dare to say, human rights movement. We invite you to join us on this pilgrimage to nonviolence. In the last few years of my daddy's life, he shifted his focus toward economic justice and international peace. We talk a lot about his focus on racial justice, but he really was at that place during the latter stages of his life where he was focusing on economic justice. And I would say it was the next phase of his life because he did not know that he would be killed so suddenly, even though he always knew that he would die by some kind of assassin's bullet. In his speech, A Time to Break Silence, he said, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin at a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice that produces beggars needs restructuring. A true revolution of values will soon look uneasily on the glaring contrast between poverty and wealth and say, this is not just." It's wonderful to see so many corporate, philanthropic, financial, media, and civic leaders here at the Hope Global Forums to weigh in on the restructuring of the edifice. We do not want our society to produce beggars. We want it to produce contributors, and we want it to be just and equitable. We are all stakeholders, welders, machinists, builders, and architects in the restructuring of our global economic edifice. As leaders in our respective fields and communities at home, we are all responsible for helping to build the beloved community and helping to create an economy that is inclusive. My father went on to say, and I want you to hear this, we must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. Imagine if we had begun that shift when he spoke it in 1967, where we would be today. He went on to say, a civilization can flounder as readily in the face of moral and spiritual bankruptcy as it can through financial bankruptcy. This may well be our last chance to choose between chaos and community. I say to you, my brothers and sisters, we do still have time to choose. And by the looks of everyone here today, I'd say we choose community. Our convener and my good friend John Hope Bryant calls this the civil rights movement, a movement for the empowerment of the wealthless in America, a movement that believes that the focus should not exclusively be on or about America's low to moderate income or any particular ethnic, racial group per se, but those who have experienced poverty in their lives, be it spiritual, mental, emotional, or financial. As I prepare to introduce our speaker, I want to leave you with some final words from that prophet Martin Luther King Jr. In the last chapter of the book I previously referenced, he recognized that there was a need for balance in our existence. He said every man, and I'll say woman as well, because he was writing in the 60s, ladies. But I'm going to say it as he said it for now, if that's okay. Every man lives in two realms, the internal and the external. The internal is that realm of spiritual ends expressed in art, literature, morals, and religion. The external is that complex of devices, techniques, mechanisms, and instrumentalities by means of which we live. Our problem today is that we've allowed the internal to become lost in the external. We've allowed the means by which we live to outdistance the ends for which we lived. Enlarged material powers spell enlarged peril if there is not proportionate growth of the soul. When the external of man's nature subjugates the internal, dark storm clouds begin to form. And this next part is as apropos, if not even more now, as when he wrote it. He said, Western civilization is particularly vulnerable at this moment, for our material abundance has brought us neither peace of mind nor serenity of spirit. When we foolishly minimize the internal of our lives and maximize the external, we sign the warrant for our own day of doom. I want you to sit with that. I want to, though, encourage each of us not to sign that warrant. Doom is not your destiny. And it's not what we want as the destiny of our nation and world. Remember, we're interrelated. We're interconnected. In fact, Daddy said we're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. And therefore, we are all in this together. You can't orbit out of here. You can't take a plane out of here. You can't take a boat out of here. You might go to another nation, but we're still all in this together. The better fortified each of us are internally, the better our communities will be as a whole. And this restructured edifice will be the beloved community. This is why the life's work and teachings of our next speaker are so important. He can help to center us back to an intentional focus on the fiber of our internal being so as to balance the demands of our external being. Deepak Chopra is one of the world's most influential holistic and spiritual thought leaders of our time, whose contributions have helped millions of people find freedom through spiritual empowerment. He's committed to building a peaceful, just, sustainable, healthy, and joyful world through his Chopra Foundation. He is a world-renowned pioneer in integrative medicine and personal transformation and is board certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, and metabolism. He is a fellow of the American College of Physicians, a member of the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, and a clinical professor in medicine at the University of California, San Diego. Mr. Chopra also serves as an adjunct professor of executive programs at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and of Columbia Business School at Columbia University. He's the author of more than 85 books. Anybody authored that many in here? That means he needs to be listened to. Translated into over 43 languages, including 25 New York Times bestsellers. His foundation is dedicated to conducting scientific research that examines the effects of mind-body practices on health and well-being, the nexus where science and soul coexist. So, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you, open your hearts and your minds and welcome to an experience with Mr. Deepak Chopra.